The Canadian GP has thrown yet another shade at the FIA's inconsistencies, further prompting enraged comments on social media. As of now, the governing body has been accused of biased stewarding towards the British drivers. But what are the proofs that we've been able to draw from the Canadian GP? And more importantly, what is the deafeningly realistic picture for drivers who do not possess a British passport? It seems like we cannot get a clean weekend without the inconsistencies of the FIA being the primary talking point. Throughout the Canadian GP, we've seen tons of inconsistencies left and right regarding different incidents. The viewers were left shocked as to which one is more baffling, but we'll leave that up to you to decide, as we're going to cover them all in this video. First and foremost, one of the most controversial topics throughout last year and converting into this one was the swearing incidents, one that brought Verstappen a community service last year. Even though the drivers were extremely angry with this decision by the FIA, Russell and Wolff stood strongly behind it, saying that drivers should serve as role models and therefore watch the language they're using. Well, let's look at this insert from Russell from the post-race conference in Canada and draw our own conclusion.
George, apologies if you answered this earlier, I missed the start, but are you going for a swim now? I think I saw a video of you earlier saying that you would if you won.
Yeah, the 2 kilometers for sure.
So, using an F word while having a full-on smile on your face is definitely enough to be a model for the young kids out there, right? And I don't even blame Russell. They are full-grown men who are competing in a high-stakes sport where every single mistake is paid for heftily. But to sit there after the race has ended and to use profane language while insisting that your competitors shouldn't do the same because you're all role models? Sorry, but that's as biased as it gets. Furthermore, the FIA's decision has been even more head-scratching. They didn't penalise Russell at all. The Brit was able to get out of this incident in the post-media pen without a reprimand, further bolstering the talks that the FIA is truly biased when it comes to making a decision against one of their own, in this case the British drivers. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's not forget that Russell has also managed to get away with unnecessarily slow driving behind the safety car, one that included heavy braking in order to see Verstappen ahead of him for a brief moment. Thanks to this manoeuvre, Russell hoped that he could get a penalty out of his competitor, but his deep elaboration on why he did what he did convinced the FIA that there is nothing to worry about. Despite the stewards accepting that there was a braking motion by Russell, which was quite unneeded at that point, they decided that it didn't endanger anyone, and it wasn't erratic driving, as Red Bull believed. Addressing this to a greater extent, the FIA wrote, "We accept the driver of Car 63's explanation of the incident, and we are satisfied that the driver of Car 63 did not drive erratically by braking where he did, or to the extent he did. We are not satisfied that by simply reporting to his team that Car 1 had overtaken him, he engaged in unsportsmanlike conduct. Even though the protest did not allege it, we are also satisfied that by braking where and when he did, and to the extent he did, the driver of Car 63 did not engage in unsportsmanlike conduct." According to Verstappen, George tried to do the right thing at first, speed up the safety car, precisely what Max was trying to do as well. But on the other hand, the Dutchman was very confused with why his rival would suddenly brake, a behaviour that was explained as a blatant try by Lambiase, Max's race engineer. Elaborating further on this incident, Verstappen said, "I think we were both trying to say to the safety car to speed up because it was only going 120 kilometers per hour. But I think maybe it was doing that to give a bit more time to maybe get a race lap in. So George was trying to speed up to the safety car, and I was trying to do the same. Once he tried to speed up to the safety car, but he backed out, and it caused a bit of confusion." Let's not forget what happened in Singapore in 2022 to Perez, who was leading the pack behind the safety car. The Mexican driver was not able to keep the needed 10-car distance, and it was penalised with 5 seconds slapped to his name. Obviously, Red Bull believed that this same nature could be applied here, hence their protest against Russell, as his erratic driving had only boosted the chances of receiving a penalty. But that didn't really catch the eye of the stewards, who were interested in giving 5-second penalties to retired drivers. This was the second offence that the F1 world cannot wrap their minds around. Norris was classified as a driver who is 4 laps down to the leader of the race after his retirement, and therefore the FIA dished him a 5-second penalty for the crash he caused. Yes, he was on the receiving end of things. Luckily, Piastri was able to avoid something bigger. But that doesn't mean the FIA should bend its rules just because we're talking about teammates here. The general belief is that if Norris were to receive a penalty, it should affect the upcoming races, such as penalty points on his super licence or potentially even a grid drop for Austria. But no, the FIA believes that if you give a retired driver a 5-second penalty, you've basically done your job. Let me show you something that could aggravate you a little bit, but it's the reality of this sport. Norris is the only driver on the grid to not have super license penalty points. I don't know how the FIA is going to escape the biased rumours, but from this point of view, it seems like they are imposing everything on themselves. Let me show you one more table that you would find too hard to believe. The top 10 penalised drivers in terms of penalty points on their super licence from 2014 onwards is composed of drivers who are outside of the UK. I don't think you could blame Verstappen for his comments that he doesn't have the right passport for this sport. The facts speak louder than words. I'm also not trying to slam the British drivers here. This is merely a comparison of how the FIA treats them and how it treats other drivers. It's not Russell or Norris's fault that they didn't receive the penalties they should have. You would think that this is enough controversy to end the weekend with for the FIA, right? Well, you'd be wrong. Let's see how the Tsunoda-Piastri incident throughout FP3 was handled. Piastri touched the wall and ended up with a rear puncture in the closing stages of the practice session. Subsequently, he drove an unsafe car on the track, one that Perez was penalised with a 3-place grid penalty for the upcoming race in Barcelona last year. Of course, the incidents were different and Perez's car was visibly more shattered, but this is about respecting the rules. Yuki Tsunoda passed Piastri on the main straight, primarily because the Aussie was out of the racing line and was limping to the pit lane. And for this action, the Red Bull driver received a 10-place grid penalty for the race. It is one of the harsher, if not the harshest, penalties that Tsunoda could have received. And he didn't do anything unsportsmanlike or endangering to the rest of the grid. Quite the contrary. Had he stayed behind Piastri, he would have risked damaging his own car from potential debris that could have flown from the McLaren. So, how do you penalise Tsunoda for trying to protect his car and the rest of the drivers on the grid, but not penalise Piastri for limping throughout the entire track and making it back to the pit lane? It's just mind-scratching. And even Tsunoda was baffled to hear that none of the drivers ahead of him were penalised for the safety car infringement that was caused after the race ended. It was quite similar. Both of the sessions were finished, there was still a cautious reprimand for the entire grid, but the big difference is that Tsunoda overtook under red flag conditions. I would understand it if it was in a very different, risky manner. Tsunoda was going extremely slow and he avoided potential complications. It's as simple as that. But the FIA didn't want to listen to anything that Red Bull had to throw towards them. On the other hand, Russell's explanation as to why he braked the way he did in order to intimidate Verstappen to get ahead of the number 63 car for a brief second has been thoroughly listened to by the stewards. I don't think this is doing the sport any good. If anything, it's hurting the legacy and the reputation that has already been shattered into many pieces. It's yet another case as to why the presidency might need to change sooner rather than later, because there comes a certain point when Ben Sulayem needs to be challenged for his position. With all this in mind, what do you think about the FIA's inconsistencies throughout the Canadian GP? And more importantly, do you think not having a UK passport is hurting the rest of the drivers on the grid? Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video that appears on your screen right now.